So last week this car had its first safety test in Ireland, which is called the NCT, the National Car Test, and it failed. I was thinking it might fail in a few things because it's the first time this test has been done on this car, and you know, things like light alignment or suspension or emissions or whatever. But the only thing it failed on was ball joints, lower ball joints. Same on both sides. So you can't actually buy the ball joints on their own. You have to get the whole lower control arm. But would you believe that Suzuki have been using the same lower control arm for Altos since 1982 to 2004, which is just mental. The good thing about that is that Altos were actually sold in various other countries during the different generations, including in Ireland and the UK. So I could just walk straight into a motor factor, pick up an arm, and we should be good to go. So the arms come with this ball joint already pre-installed, comes with a bush on this end, and it also comes with two bushes that go into this cavity here, and that attaches to the anti-roll bar. So I'm going to put this in. I don't know if I'm going to need alignment afterwards, so I'm just going to install the two of them on the front, take it on a test drive, see how it is, put it back through the test, make sure everything's okay, and if I need to get an alignment in between there, I will. And now you can clearly see the arm that I'll be replacing. Just one bolt up here on the ball joint this end, and then the bush for the anti-roll bar. So the first step I'm going to take these arms out is to take off this castle nut. There is a split pin through this, and this castle nut has two large metal washers on either side with the bushings that hold it into this A-arm that's attached to the anti-roll bar. So first this bolt off, or this nut, then the 14 at the back there, and then the ball joint. I found it was easier just to take the whole anti-roll bar off after you remove the castle nuts from each side. There's only 4 bolts holding on the anti-roll bar bushes. After you get the long 14mm bolt out, instead of a normal ball joint with a castle nut, there's a bolt that holds the ball joint in. It's one of those pinch joints here also. So if I insert a screwdriver in there, I should be able to remove the ball joint. As you can see, the screwdriver is now inserted and the ball joint was able to be removed. Before we reinstall everything, it's probably a good idea to check if everything is the right size. There is one difference that I've noticed, which is that the inner cavity that the bush inserts into, it's a slightly different shape. The OEM one is more concave. The bushes are also slightly different shape. You can see here that these bushes are worn. They might be the original ones from new, but they are a little ovaled now at this stage. These ones are designed to be used with the new control arm, so I'll be using those. Hopefully there will be no issues. I've run into a small issue here, which is with the anti-roll bar bushings going into the new arm. I can't get the castle nut on the thread as the bush is too long, and the same for the other side. The threads are just not coming through far enough. And here's the issue. The OEM bush is about 30mm tall and the new one is about 34mm tall. So the solution will be to cut these down to the correct height. And here's the section I cut off. So the old parts are out, new parts are in. The last part is to tighten down the bolts that are basically connected to any sort of bushing. So this one here is not fully tight. Basically you're letting the car down onto the ground, putting all the pressure on the suspension and then tightening that up. And then the anti-roll bar as well, same thing. So tighten that all up and then it is done. Well, I just drove to the NCT centre to get the safety check and there was no issues with alignment, driving perfectly straight and She passed! Woo! Another small job that I might as well film is this, the fuel filter. And this is where it lives. Near the rear passenger side. Just up in here. There are 3 bolts to hold this in. You've got 2 12s here and what I think is a 10 up here, and it holds this clamp. And once I have that removed, I should be able to take the filter out. Okay, bolts are out and I should be able to loosen this clamp off now. As you can probably see, the underside of this car was sprayed in a Lanagard for rust protection, and I think I might actually be sticking some of these clamps on. Maybe I just need to push it out. Okay, the filter is in, and some learnings. The clamp is designed for the original OE filter. I went with an aftermarket one. It's this Blueprint ADK 82313, and yeah, it's a slightly larger diameter. Instead of being about 58 mil, it's about 60. So you just need to adjust the bracket, bend it out a little bit, and let me show you. So I replaced a couple of bolts here. One of these bolts was just a bit crusty, so I put in a fresh one in here, and I put in a longer bolt here on this clamp just to allocate for the wider filter here. So yeah, fairly straightforward. I think it's safe to say that this fuel filter has not been changed in a while. Look at that rust on the top. Yeah, crusty. Another simple job here that's been really annoying me. And that is this. Let me zoom in. Can you see that? Absolutely terrible brake cap. So when I was changing the brake fluid, when I was doing an overhaul of the brakes, I managed to snap. I'll show you now. The kind of retaining tags here, tabs. So you can see this curls in here to grab the bottle button this side. It's snapped off. So it's not under pressure at that point at the bottle. So it's just a matter of it not falling off. But obviously it's not ideal. So I discovered that the Suzuki Cappuccino has the exact same cap. Let me just compare them to be sure. Yep, identical. Okay, on with the new one. And make sure I don't snap it. Okay, perfect. One thing I was always curious about was this little clock. It has never worked since I bought the car, and the car also came with a little blanking plate that is in there on cars that don't have this. This is like an additional extra, an optional extra when you're buying the car. I just used one of these trim removal tools to kind of pop it out. And there is 4 wires here I have checked, and one of them seems to be getting, this red one seems to be getting a positive permanent 12 volts even when the car is off and the key is not in the ignition. So I've kind of nothing to lose with this. It doesn't work at the moment. Well, I think what I'll do is disconnect this connector here, and there is 4 screws, and I'll just take it apart and see if there's anything obvious, you know, like a solder on a PCB or something like that that's gone dry. See if there's any way I could fix it. I've taken these 4 screws off, and now I can open it up. So it looks like there's two separate PCBs and a kind of a ribbon cable that joins the two. This interesting kind of perspex bit here comes through. Presumably it's to light up the gauge itself, and it takes the light from this LED, which is looking a bit crusty. The only obvious places I can see issues, this all looks clean on this side, but on this side, the main power cables from these 4 cables at the back look a bit crusty. So I think what I'll do is take off these 2 screws and pull out this side and have a look at the back there and see what the condition those are like on the other side, and then maybe keep digging in on this side as well. There's a few screws to hold on this PCB, and keep investigating. Okay, I've taken all the PCBs apart now, so the buttons are just here on the front. This is where the screen is. There's a possibility that it's just the screen that is broken and there'll be no fixing it, but I'm not sure whether this light here is turning on. I can see if I can give 12 volt power to this and see if we can at least get this LED to turn on. Or maybe you can take out this LED by rotating it here, I guess, if you ever needed to change it. But the only real kind of potential place I can see cracks is again just there on those where those 4 wires connect to. So I might just check the continuity between here and down here, just make sure the power is coming through. One thing that boggles my mind is when businesses do this. So these are the ones that open the outer case. These are for one of the PCBs to hold in it, and this is for the other one to hold in the PCB. And they're 3 completely different screws. Like, why not just use the same one? Weird. So one thing I noticed was this LED. I just took it out. Focus. You just spin it off at the back here. And I noticed that the tracks were a little bit worn. So I think somebody's had this out before. And what I did was, because this is a diode, a light emitting diode, it only lets electricity pass one direction. So there's a possibility this had been put in the wrong way. So I turned it 180 degrees, put it back in the same way and connected it back up to the cabling on the car, and the light came on. Now, I don't know if the light came on before all of this because I never had it apart. And I still don't know, will the screen come on? So what I'm going to do is reassemble everything and put it back in the car and see what happens. It could be something as simple as this LED being inserted the wrong way around. Let's see. Ignition on. You can now see the light, a green sliver of light in there. So the LED is on. However, there is nothing going on the screen. So that wasn't it. So here's the unit on. You can see the LED light coming through there. And I wanted to check, was this ribbon cable bringing the power through from this board to this board. So I have checked the 2 pins on this side here, and they are given a permanent 5 volts whether the ignition is on or off. The LED only comes on when the ignition is on. So there's a couple of resistors in here. They must be bringing the voltage down to 5 volts to pass through to this board. So leading theory is this screen itself is broken. You can see it looks a little bit tarnished. So I don't see any dry contacts here or on the reverse side. The only ones I thought might have been dry are these ones over here, but they appear to be okay. So it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to fix this. So there is basically 2 options. 1, I take it out and put the blanking plate in, or 2, I try and source a replacement clock from Yahoo Japan. I'm tempted to just go with the blanking plate, to be honest. Okay, I had to dig around my stash and I found this spare that I was looking for. I'm not exactly sure, was this in the car originally and I tried to upgrade the clock or vice versa, but it is not in good condition. It is totally cut up. All the clips have been cut off it. As you can see on the one with the clock, there's kind of retainer clips that push in and clip into the dash there. So there really is no way for me to, it's not going to hold itself in there. So that is completely pointless. So I will have to put the clock back in. And I might source another, or I might not bother. Slán,